Well, it's Thursday already. Just the other day, it was a Monday. Hope you're well and rise and shine. It is time for Morning Cafe. My name is Linda Alela and this is TV 47, the home of untold stories. It's a pleasure to have you this morning as we look at the day's stories and just ponder on them. And of course, it's my pleasure to have you as I hope that you'll be part and parcel of the conversation from 6 a.m. all the way to 10 a.m. It's always good doing this with you. The hashtag is Morning Cafe at Linda_Alela at TV 47 KA. I'll be looking at what you tell us this morning as we continue with the broadcast. So karibu sana as you are part of the conversation. We'll be looking at what is taking center stage in the political world in the country. Well, these as Ruto allies are out there going for the top Uhuru men who argue that it is a time that they speak politics. And I mean, we have seen CSs going out with Right Honorable Raila Odinga trying to endorse his bid for presidency, something that has hugely been castigated because then it's quite hard to detect which one is right to do, and especially when these figures are using government machinery. And so the Ruto men have gone for them and they say it is important, or it's time that they now resign and stick to politics or stick to politicking, which is something that is set to be debated. So we'll be having that conversation this morning as we take a look at also what is happening at the level of the courts. This as President Uhuru Kenyatta has equally appealed court ruling on the appointment of the 6 judges. Well, it is a ruling that has brought lots of controversy and is said to make it even worse in the sense that there's going to be some bit of crisis between the two arms of government, that is the judiciary and the executive. And so we'll be looking at that and I mean so much more, so make sure that you keep it right here. Above all, we'll be taking a look at hiking, and we just get to understand the processes of hiking, those people who go out there for hiking. And this time around we have individuals that are doing the same but for a purpose. Just exactly what is that? Hold it right there. It's a conversation that you can't afford to meet. And later on, after the hiking process, which is more or less like exercise, and also in this case then it's about preserving the environment, we'll then hit the gym alongside Shadrach of Physique Gym. So if you're at home, make sure that you have your gears ready. It will be about flexing a bit and getting to make sure that we are fit and healthy. So karibu sana. Let's first of all look at what the papers detail. We have the Standard newspaper, the People Daily and the Daily Nation, and we look at the front pages of the same as we await to have the guests of the morning. The People Daily speaks of Madam Anne Waiguru, the governor of Kirinyaga County. Waiguru faces arrest over graft, also likely to be charged alongside Kirinyaga governor as some county officials and MCAs, whether by coincidence or design, accompanied her to Ruto's current residence to defect to UDA. That is on Tuesday. A story captured on page 4. Is she being targeted because, well, she now wants to work with the DP? Is one conversation that we'll be having, and probably will prove that allegation by them that a majority of them that seek to work with the DP will always be targeted. So we'll be looking at that and whether it's a reality check or what exactly could be informing this move. Is a story captured on page 4, and so hold it right there as we await for the same. English mass failure for UK bound nurses. A story captured on page 6. Only 10 out of 300 managed to pass the minimum entry test to get UK healthcare positions. Well, the CS Kagwe says when we talk about the future, we need to prepare ourselves in that space. Remember, there was that agreement that was there between President Uhuru Kenyatta and the UK government in regards to making sure that at least Kenyans are able to secure jobs at the United Kingdom. And we had lots of doctors and nurses coming to or going to the United Kingdom so that they would get these positions. But as it is, as you can see, it is evident that we have a long way in terms of the trainings that we give, and to make sure that at least the people that we send outside or to the global fraternity to get jobs then are well prepared for the market. So it's a conversation that is worth having, and maybe it's a wake-up call for that matter. 47 more members of parliament fingered for CDF misuse. Our Auditor General says leaders cannot account for money meant for bursaries and development. That is on 2019, the year under the review by Nancy Gathungu. We'll be looking at that, and we also get to see how then this is going to be addressed because, well, graft is evidently at the level of the counties, and even worse, it's not been clear how the CDF funds have been used. And Kayange joins a Rugby Hall of Fame. A former Kenya captain becomes inductee 150 in the coveted sports club for his role in the game. That is in the sports world, as we keep celebrating our sportsmen and women for always making us proud. And Daily Nation, the front page. Let's first look at this story that is here. We have Gengeton women storm the scene, a story captured on page 3. It's an interesting piece, so to speak. Now we have the women who are now joining this genre of music in terms of entertaining the people. We have constantly said that we don't have our music being played, but Gengeton has proved otherwise, in as much as many people have questioned how, you know, the music is, and, you know, the straightness of the music, or so to speak. We also are seeing the women taking up the challenge. Regions where campaigns cost an arm and a leg. Western and Nyanza are the most expensive regions to run campaigns in, as one senator admits to spending about 100 million. A story captured on page 4. That's going to be interesting to even get to understand why is it that it appears like it's very expensive if you want to go and sell your bid somewhere in Western Kenya and Nyanza. Yet, because of the die-hard aspect, you find that a majority of these leaders sometimes will actually sail through without having to go on ground and hit the campaign. One would argue that the likes of a senator of Siaya County, you know, have managed to sail to power without having to campaign much because, well, they are allies of the Right Honorable, that is Raila Odinga. And so we'll be looking at that again as we continue. Mudavadi promises to cut debt, jumpstart economy. Remember, all the presidential hopefuls are now speaking of how best they'd be able to deal with the troubles that we're having in regards to the economy. Is it realistic, or so to speak? Well, one can only wait and see. The biggest story, Uhuru Raila delay Nairobi campaigns. Well, county leads in number of registered voters with 2,250. That is actually 2 million around there. And reported by IEBC, well, a long await as politicians take positions in preparation for next year's general elections. The capital city, usually the epicenter of Kenya's politics, is uncharacteristically quiet. It has everything to do with the planned coalition between the president and the former prime minister, which is expected to culminate in horse trading. A story captured on page 4 and in watch, and true to it, a majority have been waiting to see what then will be the move of President Uhuru Kenyatta. That is Jubilee Party, of course, and definitely that one of Right Honorable Raila Odinga. And whether they'll work with the likes of the One Kenya Alliance, then that will set the ball of campaigns officially rolling. Hospitals up in arms over NHIF's new dialysis rates. The National Hospital Insurance Fund plans to increase the frequency of dialysis sessions from the current 2 to 3 a week. That is to be in line with international standards, but has reduced the reimbursement by about 3,000, which means patients will have to pay the difference. A story captured on the back. Then one would ask, what is the essence of paying the monthly fee for NHIF? The troubles of health continue to be here. This, as the Big Four agenda still is, of course, quashed, because it appears like President Uhuru Kenyatta will not be so lucky to achieve the same before he exits the stage. And Jubilee downplays Waiguru's defection. Only Waiguru defected as she did it because she is personally unable to do her politics herself, and so she needs it done for her by others. Nyeri Town Member of Parliament Ngunjiri Wambogo argues that way. It's a conversation that is on. We'll definitely be looking at it as we continue. On matters education and equal pay angers ECD teachers. A story captured on page 12. For the longest of time, they have complained that they have really not gotten that balance in regards to how they are treated in comparison to the other teachers. And even worse is on this aspect of drought in the country. and drought puts more at risk of starvation. The number of pupils of Chesotim Primary School has fallen from about 200 last term to 50. The school is not covered by the feeding program. Government spokesman Cyrus Oguna toured parts of the country, or this particular county, that is yesterday, and maintained that there is enough food for the more than 2.1 million food distressed people, but such is not the case. The pictures that we see, and the picture in particular on the papers, is one that speaks volumes as to how best as a country we can be able to make sure that these counties, about 20-something counties that are faced with the aspect of starvation, then are cushioned. All that right here. And the Standard newspaper, briefly, Ruto allies go for top Uhuru men. This is what we'll be discussing this morning. And we ask, does it have to be the DP supporters that are going out for this men, or it is the most noble thing as enshrined in the constitution that the CSAs should not go out there evidently or outrightly campaigning for specific presidential hopefuls? Well, we're looking at that. This as a DP defender in fake papers court drama. Sudi has always described DP's rivals as fake, but yesterday a court was told that his KCSE and diploma certificates presented to IEBC, that is in 2013, were fake. A story captured on page 4. And on matters, of course, business and farming, right here, tea farmers lose about 6 billion at auction. It's a story captured on page 25 on the business side. You can always grab your copy and get to understand that. And this one that is captured on the county edition, page 21, governors sue senators amid extortion claims. The story captured on page 21. We'll be looking at details of the same as we continue with the broadcast, so make sure that you keep it right here. Let's look at what my team has prepared. And on matters education, construction of classrooms to boost the CBC program is actually set to begin in earnest, with Education Cabinet Secretary Professor George Magoha promising Kenyans that the classrooms will be ready for use by April next year. Catherine Wimbley reports.
Preparations for the construction of 10,000 new classes in public schools is in top gear ahead of the transition of learners from primary to junior secondary, with Education Cabinet Secretary Professor George Magoha saying the construction is expected to begin soon.
Our goal is to deliver. The government will provide the money. Nobody can say he or she is going to pay you for what you are going to do.
Education Cabinet Secretary Professor George Magoha is specific on who will receive the tender for the construction of classrooms aimed at creating an additional learning space for the 1.1 million grade 6 learners.
We go back to these fundis. In fact, I'm looking at my own village home, and I can already see about 4 or 5 different groups who have a roadmap of building classrooms over the last 30 years. Are we going to identify them or not? You must identify them so that this money goes, the way the president wants, the money goes to the lowest person and stimulates the economy coming upwards.
In a meeting that brought together county commissioners, Magoha painted a clear picture on the government's expectation, terming the classrooms as simple and cost-effective.
I would want, at the end of this process, me and my brother, Fred Matiang'i, we send out again an advert to the public to say that this is how we have done the schools. And if you like, you can go and have a look at it.
Interior Cabinet Secretary Dr. Fred Matiang'i was also in attendance and called on Kenyans to embrace the CBC program.
For us to succeed, I would like to request you kindly, please, to push so hard our teams in the sub-counties to start preparations now.
CS George Magoha is clear on one thing. The construction of new classrooms will require a teamwork. He is encouraging divergent views as long as the goal is the same. Catherine Achieng Wimbley for TV 47.
Thanks, Kate, for that. Now, the World Bank Board of Directors has approved about 16.7 billion shillings financing agreement with the government of Kenya to strengthen local resilience to the impact of climate change in Kenya, as the country will be the global pioneer in operationalizing social resilience principles of devolved climate finance. This is after President Uhuru Kenyatta stated that in the trunting of urgent climate change adaptation actions, Africa's gross domestic product GDP risks contracting by up to 30% by the year 2050. Now, the head of state's message was contained in a recorded video address delivered at hybrid conference hosted by the University of Nairobi in partnership with the Global Center of Adaptation to celebrate the Africa Adaptation Acceleration Day, a precursor that is to the United Nations Climate Change Conference, that is COP26, that will be held in Glasgow, Scotland.
Does indicate that climate change will have a devastating sub-economic impact across the world, but quite severely here in Africa. If we do not take any action, Africa could, as a consequence, see its gross domestic product contract by up to 30% by 2050 due to climate change. We plan to invest approximately $8 billion over the next 10 years. This is just 10% of the total investment needed of the NDCs, and we therefore need support from our international partners. The financing challenge is not peculiar to Kenya. Globally, funding for climate adaptation, which in 2017 averaged around $30 billion a year, would need to increase tenfold to meet the growing needs of vulnerable communities in our warming planet.
Now, imagine you drinking Mira juice, Mira energy drink, or even Mira wine. This will soon be a reality after the government put in place measures to boost the trade of Mira in the country. And as Elizabeth Otieno now reports, the Ministry of Agriculture has showcased drinks produced from Mira plant in a bid to add value addition for the stimulant.
Soon, Kenyans will be able to enjoy Mira not just as a plant, but as a drink with varieties like Mira juice, Mira energy drink, or wine.
This effort is also welcome because in the long term, as the government has pointed out, we need to see other ways and means of diversifying and packaging our products to access changing markets.
And it is over time that tea got processed and now nobody chews tea leaves. So you can imagine if tea is being sold as leaves, then we sell Mira. How much trade can we do?
Speaking during the National Scientific Mira Conference jointly organized by the Kenya Medical Research Institute KEMRI and the Meru County Government, Interior Cabinet Secretary Dr. Fred Matiang'i announced plans to set up an intergovernmental committee to address issues hampering the growth of the Mira industry in a bid to promote exports.
My proposal, effective today, is that we have a standing intergovernmental team on Mira. Intergovernmental because it will bring the county government of Meru and the interministerial team, as I said, that is chaired by the PS Trade, together in addressing these issues as we move forward.
The government also accused the National Authority for Campaign Against Alcohol and Drug Abuse, NACADA, of spearheading negative campaigns against the Mira product.
Like what NACADA is saying is something that we need to check. Anyway, it's true, they work under my ministry. I promise that I will speak to them to revise their position and stop harassing Mira traders and farmers across the country.
The government has pointed out and been making it difficult to go to the next level, especially the issue of NACADA continuing to treat Mira as a drug. Yet there is no scientific evidence anywhere that proves that Mira is a drug.
Matiang'i has called for the inclusion of Mira discussions in bilateral talks to expand market for the farmers. Elizabeth Atieno, TV 47.
Now, only 10 out of 300 clinical officers passed the English language test required for the United Kingdom jobs. Health Cabinet Secretary Mutahi Kagwe says the unemployed healthcare workers that were supposed to serve in UK's National Health Service failed the English language test administered by the embassy. Maria Mocharo with that.
290 out of 300 unemployed clinical officers in the country failed miserably in the English language test for UK jobs. This is according to Health Cabinet Secretary Mutahi Kagwe, who said only a minority of those who applied for the job qualified.
Let me tell you what has happened, and this is the truth. When we test, because there are certain tests that one has to do depending on the region in the world that you are going to. For instance, the ones who are going to England have got to do tests in English, and they have got to do tests, I think, in computers. And our failure rate, particularly in English, is extremely high. True, Dr. We sent 300 people to do the English exams. 10 passed.
Kagwe termed the turn of events as unfortunate and appealed to the healthcare workers to put more efforts to ensure they surpass the employment standards set for the jobs abroad.
I mean, we are going to negotiate, yes, but you are going to have to pass the exams. Not me, you. So when we do those exams, let's prepare ourselves. Let's set the standards, Prof. Let's set the standards so that we are sure that there is no exam anywhere on earth that a clinical officer trained in Kenya can fail. This is an issue. And therefore, when we talk about technologies, when we talk about the future, we need to prepare ourselves to be in that space.
The unemployed healthcare workers recently got a chance to work in the UK as part of the new scheme requested by the government early this year. The Health Cabinet Secretary at the same time promised various reforms in the health sector, saying that it's imperative that the National Hospital Insurance Fund caters for the full medical expenses for Kenyans in order for the country to realize affordable healthcare.
As a government, the way that we are going to keep this cost down, as I've said, is that we are going to improve, reform, and make sure that the National Hospital Insurance Fund is one that can be able to provide and cater for. The purpose of the institution is not just to pay for you and then leave you to sell your cow so that you can meet the difference. The purpose is to pay completely. When you say affordable health care, it means you don't go back to your pocket if you have got a National Health Insurance Fund registration.
Kagwe added that talks are underway to ensure healthcare services are affordable to all Kenyans. On the other hand, welfare for the healthcare workers is set to improve as clinical officers' interns are yet to be posted abroad. NHIF and the health sector is expected to realize reforms in the future. But according to Health Cabinet Secretary Mutahi Kagwe, this is not enough if quality training is not realized to achieve competency in the global market. Mariam Wacharo, TV 47, Mombasa County.
Well, thanks, Mariam, for that. And to more on health, malaria prevalence rate has dropped by 2% from 8% in 2015 to 6% in 2020. This is according to the Kenya Malaria Indicator Survey 2020 released by the Division of National Malaria Program and the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. Speaking during the survey launch, the head National Malaria Program, Dr. George Kidhuka, attributed the drop to sustained prevention intervention measures in the high-prone and endemic areas in the country. Zainab Mohammed with that.
The Kenya Malaria Indicator Survey 2020 has shown a steady decline in the malaria prevalence in the country by 2% from 8% in 2015 to 6% in 2020. According to the survey, the prevalence that is varying greatly by endemicity zone ranges from less than 1% in low-risk zones to 19% in lake endemic zones. Among children aged 6 to 14 years, the survey found that malaria prevalence is higher among rural children as compared to urban children by 4%, from 7% in rural living children to 3% in urban living children. Eligible children aged 6 months to 14 years were also tested for anemia, the survey finding an overall 2% of children having low hemoglobin. In terms of intervention measures, the survey noted an uptake of 3 or more doses of intermittent preventive treatment in the targeted endemic areas being recorded, with the Lake region recording a 14% increase from 2015 and the coastal region recording a 3% rise. However, the survey shows a downward trend in the adoption of other key malaria indicators such as the ownership and use of insecticide-treated nets. In the percentage of households owning at least one net, the survey shows a decrease of 49% from 63% in 2015. Similarly, the percentage of the household population who slept under a net the night before the survey was conducted decreased to 35% from 48% in 2015. The survey concluding that only 29% of the households have enough nets to cover each member should one net be used by 2 people. Zainab Mohammed, T47.
And Interior Principal Secretary Karanja Kibicho has pointed an accusing finger at the Judiciary and the National Cohesion and Integration Commission for failing to successfully prosecute culprits of political violence. As Paul Kirobi reports, Kibicho has promised Kenyans of a peaceful country ahead of 2022 elections.
But it was for good reasons.
The blame game on who is responsible for prosecuting hate mongers continues, with Interior Principal Secretary Karanja Kibicho now accusing the Judiciary of failing to effectively ensure those fanning violence and hate speech stay behind bars. Speaking during a symposium that brought together Interreligious Council of Kenya, NCIC and the Ministry of Interior, Kibicho said efforts to ensure hate mongers are punished have been fruitless thanks to the Judiciary.
When a person is arrested by NCIC because of hate speech and they are released the following day, the message we are passing to NCIC is that they are doing useless work. When a person is arrested in a scene of crime and obvious crime committed and they are released the following morning free, a matter is said it will be heard in June next year, we are injuring the morale of our people, the royal forces, and therefore we've also taken the opportunity before the religious leaders to speak to our judiciary so that they reconcile.
Kibicho has promised that the government will beef up security ahead of the 2022 elections, with special cadets expected to work closely with the electoral body IEBC to ensure a peaceful country.
But I want to...
However, Uasin Gishu Governor Jackson Mandago has poked holes on the mandate of the National Cohesion and Integration Commission, saying officials from the commission are misleading Kenyans on some matters.
Nimeona jana Eldoret kuna watu ya National Cohesion and Integrity Commission ati wanakuja kuzunguka, hiyo ni fitina. Kama watu wanafanya mambo ya uwazi, wafanye kupitia ofisi ya governor na county commission.
However, NCIC has promised to ensure political parties sign a decency charter to enhance accountability among politicians and political parties ahead of the next year general elections.
That we will then have the leaders of the registered political parties to sign a charter on political decency and accountability and commit themselves to call their own members to order so that no political party will tolerate members of their political party involved in hate speech.
We encourage IEBC to focus on technical issues deemed critical to election legitimacy, such as the electoral databases, reliability, and electoral results compilation.
NCIC says it is committed to ensuring lasting peace in the country.
They can know you.
Paul Kirobi, TV47, Nairobi.
Well, the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission insists that it's facing a budget deficit of 14.6 billion shillings. IEBC Chair Wafula Chebukati has told the Parliamentary Committee that is on budget that the Commission requires about 40.9 billion shillings to conduct the 2022 general elections. Joash Ansari with that.
asked, kindly make it brief, 1 or 2 questions.
The Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, IEBC, now says it is facing a deficit of 14.6 billion shillings. The Commission's chair, Wafula Chebukati, told the Parliamentary Budget and Appropriation Committee that the Commission needs 40.9 billion shillings to conduct the 2022 general election.
Budget is 40.3 billion plus 503 million for COVID, making it 40.9 billion. Now that budget is what we were explaining to the committee. It's activity-based, based on the legal framework we have in the country. And as a commission, one of our biggest challenges is actually the issue of funding.
Speaking when he met members of the Parliamentary Budget and Appropriation Committee, Chebukati said the National Treasury allocated the Commission 26.5 billion shillings and later added the Commission 10 billion shillings. According to Chebukati, the electoral body only received 2.1 billion out of the 2.4 billion set aside for the mass voter registration exercise.
The allocation in the budget this year this financial year 2021-22 was 26.5 billion. Already National Treasury has considered adding 10 billion, which has to go through this the Committee of Budget and Appropriations and Parliament before we allocated that money. So there's progress, there's light at the end of the tunnel.
Further, the IEBC chairman has assured Kenyans that the voter registration exercise will continue at the constituency level after the lapse of the 2nd November deadline.
Kumbuka tukimaliza na hii mass voter registration next week, bado watu wataendelea kuregister kwa constituency, bado transfers zitaendelea mpaka hiyo register iwe closed 90 days to election. So hii ni jambo ambayo litaendelea na Wakenya wasio na wasiwasi.
The chairman of the Parliamentary Budget and Appropriation Committee, Kanini Kega, has stated that they will have another meeting next week with the Commission before they meet the National Treasury CS Ukuru Yatani.
Tutakuwa na kikao kingine ili tuandike ripoti ambayo tutaipeleka kule bungeni, na pia tutakuwa na kikao na Wizara ya Fedha ili tuhakikishe kwamba zile fedha ambazo zinahitajika kwa wakati huu ili tuwe na uchaguzi ulio wa haki na wa kuaminika, lazima tuhakikishe kwamba hizo hela zinatolewa kwa wakati ufaao.
Joash Onsare, TV 47.
And after months of soul searching, Kirinyaga Governor Anne Waiguru on Tuesday ditched the ruling Jubilee Party for Deputy President-led party UDA. Now, the first-term governor was touted as President Uhuru Kenyatta's point woman, that is in Mount Kenya region, and her exit from the ruling Jubilee Party could change the political landscape in the region. Although pundits have termed her move as political suicide, it appears Waiguru could be Ruto's running mate in 2022 presidential elections, as Musa Salah now reports.
Tuesday's closed-door meeting at Deputy President William Ruto's current residence was perhaps Kirinyaga Governor Anne Waiguru's last resort to saving her short political career, ditching President Uhuru Kenyatta's Jubilee Party for the United Democratic Alliance UDA, a new political outfit associated with the Deputy President and which has made inroads in Jubilee strongholds. Waiguru, who was once President Kenyatta's point woman in Mount Kenya region, will defend her seat against her greatest rival and county woman representative Purity Ngirishi, an ardent supporter of Deputy President William Ruto. The two expected to battle it out at the party primaries before going to the ballot.
Kwa sababu kiongozi ambaye anafikiria ati yeye ndio anaambia wananchi na sio wananchi wanamwambia, huyo ni kiongozi ambaye anaweza jipata mahali ambapo unakuwa mtu irrelevant. Kwa sababu wananchi ndio wanaamua.
Na sababu wamekuja wakati ni late kidogo, mimi kama ambaye nitasimama governor katika hiyo chama, I am asking them wakuje, wakuwa wapole, tutaenda nominations na mimi niko tayari kumenyana na wale.
But it appears Waiguru's change of tune is a strategic gamble. Torn between retaining President Kenyatta's Mount Kenya base and appeasing other regions, Ruto faces an uphill task in selecting a potential running mate, a dilemma that Waiguru is set to exploit to her advantage.
As you have said, you have been waiting for this moment. I have also told you, even on this other side, we have also been waiting for this moment. Because we all knew it is going to happen. When was the problem?
Selecting a running mate from Mount Kenya region would make it easier for Ruto to woo Uhuru's supporters, but has the danger of entrenching the two communities in the presidency narrative that can work against him. Ruto's strategists, however, say whoever will be picked as a deputy must have a firm grip on their political backyard so as to add significant votes to Ruto's basket to successfully ward off the opposition onslaught. If she loses the party nomination and fails to convince Ruto to pick her as his number 2, pundits argue that Waiguru is assured of a top government job or a nomination slot in parliament, a possibility that the county boss is said to be counting on.
Excellency, Madam Governor.
Well, and since we have spoken about that story right from that time we got the shocker on Tuesday, I think it's only fair that I allow the gentlemen that we have on board this morning to also give us their view in regards to the same. Not a surprise, as of course the DP would say. They equally were waiting for that moment because they were certain that the moment was coming. Honorable Eseli Simiyu, Member of Parliament of Tongaren, is with us this morning, and Honorable Ndegwa Njiru, who is a constitutional lawyer. It's a pleasure to have you gentlemen on board. And so, Mahesh, such is politics.
Thank you for having me this morning.
Yeah.
I think I've said this before, that this is the season for politicians to have eyes even at the back of their heads. And it's the season for smoke and mirrors.
Nice.
So you really don't know what's going to happen the following day.
Yeah.
It's happening now much earlier than the usual times in the election calendar. We expect these things around 3, at the most 4 months to the election, but they are happening much earlier. So you can't tell who else is going to move from where to where. As I said, it's the time of smoke and mirrors. So I wouldn't want to speculate too much on that move, except for the, how do you call it, for the visibility and perception issues. Remember, Raila Amolo Odinga had just campaigned through Mount Kenya, and there was a lot of hype about it. So somebody had to find a way of deflating that.
Okay.
So it's the time for smoke and mirrors. So
and really the mountain is set to surprise us, to be honest.
The people, the contenders for the top seat, this is a time, in fact, for them, for us running for constituencies, it's enough to have eyes at the back of your head. For them, they must have eyes in front, at the back of their head, and the sides.
The sides as well. The mountain is set to surprise us. I mean, this is some of the surprises that we face. In the words of Anne Waiguru, you can only, rent a person from the mountain and not buy them in totality. What do you make of her move? Historic, without doubt.
Well, thank you once again for having us here to expound on these very important issues. In my view, when you purport that you can only rent and you cannot buy, it shows how cheap one is in terms of having concrete principles and in terms of having solid decisions. And it shows that then you become rented for purposes of self-preservation. Because you've had a submission severally that whatever she did in response to probably a purported clamor by the crowd. I don't know how scientific she was in her probably collecting the views and the data of those persons who would support her to join the UDA. But in my view, she was reacting to the emotions of the times. And it's a decision that she might live to regret in the future, because she was not, in my view, as Mheshimiwa says, we are used to having it 2 or 3 months, the elections. that might surprise her in the future. But more importantly to note is that it's not how he's offering leadership. The electorates are the ones who are offering leadership to her.
Right.
That tells you what kind of a leader then she is. And probably that's the reason why wherever she goes, there are issues and matters arising. For example, the NYS issue, now the Kirinyaga 10.5 billion of safaris that were never undertaken.
Yeah.
I think she's then not very concrete in terms of decision making, and she has allowed the people to take hostage of her destiny. And to me, that's a very, very toxic issue for a leader, because a leader, as we all know, is the one who shows the directions to the people. But now, even as she engages in a self-preservation situation, the question then is whether joining the UDA will sanitize her of all the negativity that the people of Kirinyaga have against her. And probably she might want to even defect to a political party, probably called with a more pronounced religious and spiritual attachment than UDA if she's to win an election in Kirinyaga.
All right. You know, Honorable Eseli Simeo, I don't know whether you'd consider these emotions, because even at the level of Parliament, the questions are whether the ayes and the nays have it. In most cases, it's in what turns out to be the loudest, right? And so in this case, Honorable Anne Waiguru, he is the voice of the people. Well, probably sealing this whole thing. Mashujaa Day celebrations, and we all had it anyway, to be honest. Can't you just you know, give it to her that indeed the voices dictated that, well, there's some essence of liking for UDA, but even as that could be the trigger as to why she took that move, the question then is, what kind of leadership do we have? A leadership that would probably look at this side and consider it not the best side, but just because the people said it, then they are forced to go to that direction.
I think it goes to prove that a lot of us in elective positions are opportunists, such that we don't have any principles. That if the people tells you left, you turn left, whether you're taken into a ditch or not. If they tell you right, you turn right, whether there's a ditch or not.
Yeah.
And I think, as my colleague said, as a leader, you must lead. You are not supposed to be, you can't let, how do you allow the tail to wag the dog? It's the dog to wag the tail.
The tail, yeah.
So this is a situation where I think it epitomizes the actual problem with Kenyan politics, lack of principles. Because remember, she was there before, moved to the handshake side, then now she's moved back. You know, oscillating like a yo-yo that way, it won't help you in politics.
But let's face it again, it is a game of strategy.
They call it strategy,
yes,
but that's just an excuse for lack of principles.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you think it will cost her politically, having been here long enough?
I don't know if it will cost her politically, but to me, it epitomizes what the problem in Kenya is.
Yeah.
The issue that people are playing politics without principles, and that is what is ailing Kenya. Such that if you no ideology at all, because you are not supposed to jump from here to there unless you actually agree with those ideologies. So if you keep on oscillating like a yo-yo that way, then what are your ideologies actually?
That's true.
And what Waiguru has done is to exemplify what ails Kenya's politics, that people cannot stand up for anything. Like you find people right now, it's long before the campaign period, and some people are going around actually bribing voters. You know, you stop at a marketplace, you give them 2 million, that's bribing voters.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Hold it right there. Let's look at this story that has been captured on the front page of the People Daily. I know you don't have the People Daily, but it's somewhere projected on the screen. And Waiguru faces arrest as graft probe concluded. Well, EACC has denied that the case has any link to Kirinyaga governor's defection from Jubilee. How can they deny that?
It probably has a link, because you remember that the side he has gone, usually if you are accused of any corruption charges,
they're always on you.
The team always comes to protect you, and they say, oh, they are doing this because it's part of the hustler nation, and so on. So I don't know how
But
many,
is this then not a justification,
I don't know how many
Wakili?
hustlers live in where he go to region.
Yes.
Is that where he go
Well, thank you very much, and I fully associate myself with the submissions of Mheshimiwa. But we need to remember that the County Assembly of Kirinyaga did put up a strong and spirited case before the Senate,
yes,
questioning the conduct and the financial impropriety of Governor Waiguru. When the Senate sat then and dismissed the case for the County Assembly and probably upheld Governor Waiguru's prepositions, it then said that there were no facts that were concrete enough to impeach Governor Waiguru. But that was just a political statement because the evidence and the facts still remained in the documents that we had tabled in the Senate. And I was surprised to see Senator Malala making some comments about this person. And I was like, amen, you don't have the chills.
Right.
You're the same person who saved this girl. So my thinking is that it would be erroneous for anyone to think that upon the failure to impeach Waiguru, that the other state organs also rested their case.
Okay.
The EACC continued with its investigation. Documents were tabled. They actually pounced on Governor Waiguru's residence, Sevelary. She was invited to go and record statements before the EACC. We ourselves forwarded documents in respect to the imprests amounting to 10.5 million. Money that was actually taken from the exchequer, the public's coffers, and travels that were never undertaken.
Okay.
So it will be erroneous for us to then think that just because she has indicated a desperate move of joining the UDA, that it is the same reason that the arrest will be procured. There is completely no nexus or connectivity between those two events. Because we cannot then be saying that whenever we call someone to account, whenever we say that we need transparency in the manner in which we run government, whenever we say that we need prudent use of public resources, and then when we say that you Governor Waiguru, you have no prudence in utilization of public resources, then you start alleging you're
But
being
Wakili,
pursued.
the timing is suspect.
There is no timing. Once the investigator completes his investigation, he is destined to present that file to the appropriate authority.
Politically speaking, it's not the first time that we hear this. Waiguru has complained of the same. And I mean, in such...
No, she's not the first person to complain.
Yes.
Any person who is joining Karen, Karen, is a person who is tainted with moral and financial improprieties.
Is it so? Okay.
Yes. So much so that you might want to cite people because their cases are there. You can comfortably cite people like the member of parliament for Mathira. You can comfortably cite the governor for Migori. And so many of them. Look at people like Oscar Sudi. You can easily cite them that they all have, these are lamps with blemish.
Okay.
And because they're lamps with blemish, they must associate themselves with a person who can easily sacrifice a lamp with blemish and feel comfortable. So in my view, any person who goes to the Karen factor or Karen sanitization, he's going there or she's going there for self-preservation. So much so that in the unlikely event Karen takes government, they will be immunized. So it's a self-preservation. But we are saying that these institutions that we have, be it the EACC, be it the DPP, be it the DCI, must immunize themselves from political machinations, and they must not be compromised or prejudiced by the political pronouncements that I'm being pursued because I've joined Karen. Come on, we'll pursue. We want to know what happened to 10.5 million of the safaris that Waiguru did not go.
Before we come to Mahesh, you put up a strong case, well, courtesy of the county, in regards to, this case that is now out here. Were you in agreement with the sanitization processes, or so to speak, that happened in Capitol Hill that, played out at the level of Senate?
We never actually, that sanitization at Capitol Hill, which actually saved Governor Iguru, affected our case. And that's why we are saying that those persons, be it Deputy President William Ruto, be it the Prime Minister Raila Odinga, they must clearly pronounce themselves on where they stand in matters corruption.
Okay.
Because you cannot be saving somebody for purposes of political convenience. Because this is what happened. She was saved for purposes of political convenience because at that particular time, she had inclined towards the hardship. Now, she has inclined towards the UDA because she wants to be immunized.
You are a strong supporter of the BBI, and
yes.
She
and today I still believe in its tenets.
Yes. And she as well was a main contender of the BBI, a main of course supporter of the BBI. At such a point, did you have any questions in regards to her?
Oh yes. If there are rotten oranges in a sack, there are rotten oranges.
No,
you cannot just. There's no question to it.
All right, hold it.
But just before I say that, we know that you remember the parable of the sower who went to sow some seeds. Some of them fell in fertile ground, others fell in thorns, others fell on rocks. But there is that we knew even in the BBI that there are those seeds that fell in the rock and they would never germinate. We also knew there are those that fell in the fertile ground and will germinate. So we are only waiting for the opportune time to implement the proposal of the BBI in terms of matters corruption. I'm one of those guys who never entertain an accountability or transparency. That has been my crusade, that has been my creed.
Well, I repeat again, the timing is suspect as to, the EACC now
it's
coming.
No suspect.
All right, well, let's allow Mheshimiwa come in. Mahesh, politically speaking, we have seen how this has somehow again managed to garner some bit of sympathy votes for, such people that, of course, are allied to the Deputy President. Don't you think that this, again, will add or top up more votes to them?
On her personal level,
yeah,
I think that was a smart move, because she had to go to a place where she'll get that protection.
Okay.
Because the group she has joined like hectoring the investigative arms, they like hectoring the judiciary. So where she has gone is where she feels at the moment she'll get protection. That's a very smart move on that part, at that level.
Right.
But I think it still doesn't help us, because to me, it reflects very badly on the politics of this country.
Right.
Even if she'll get some protection by them going around the country, hectoring the judiciary, hectoring the investigative arms, that, oh, you've come for her because she's joined us, that kind of thing. Perhaps she knew that her time was up.
Right.
And that's why she ran there very fast.
Okay.
She knew that, oops, because remember one time she complained and said, oh, they are investigating me, they are doing what and what. Well, I think as the investigations went on and she realized that they were about to catch up, she ran to where she thinks the protection will come from.
Yes.
And that's what she's done. That's what I'm saying.
Let's talk about the voter.
That's a very smart move.
Let's talk about the voter who would, in most cases, make decisions based on party affiliation, tribe, based on these aspects of sympathy. What does this speak to them?
I think, unfortunately, the Kenyan voter has been conditioned to the point of, let's say, protecting your honor. Even if you went and told a voter that so-and-so has emptied the coffers of the country, but so long as he's giving them goodies, the voters will tell you that he's a good thief, he shares with us. That kind of silly remark.
Yes.
And so I would not rely on the Kenyan voter on this one. I would rely on the institutions that have been set up in this country to do their work. In the sense that if you know very well somebody has got that kind of baggage, why are you allowing them on the ballot paper? And that's where we start from. That's where the rain started beating us. And I'm afraid that at the moment in this country, you get very few principled politicians, because we've actually messed up our political space to the point where it is actually a refuge for renegades and terrible people. And that's not good for the country.
Right.
And as they say that people get the leaders they deserve, those are the voters. The voters need to change their mindset and realize that even if somebody is bringing you goodies, you should actually question where are these goodies coming from? Because it's not right that people should just splash that kind of money, hard-earned money. Remember, in many countries, and I must admit that I myself in my politics have actually been supported by some business people. But they have a reason where they tell me, okay, this is our business and we like your policies, so we'll contribute to your election kitty. And it's not been much, just a little, you know.
Yeah.
And I managed to move.
Right.
But the current situation in this country, if we don't change our politics, we are heading for trouble.
All right.
We are going down.
All right.
Because it looks like the more nefarious you are, the more you are.
Yeah, the more thinking you are, the more attractive.
Yes, the more attractive. Yes. Now, the Kenyan voter needs to relook at who they are voting for. There's no point voting for the wrong characters, then complaining about, oh, we are not being catered for, we are not being, assisted, and things like that. I think the Kenyan voter needs to start thinking seriously.
But just who are these that are of right character? And Wakili, coming back to you, still, coming from, hailing from the mountain, and we keenly are observing the mountain.
Yes.
And, what the mountain dictates will hugely, equally dictate how the 2022 poll then will go. But we have some few figures that we look at, and when we see them speak, then we know that somehow, there's something that is happening in the mountain. Waiguru is one of these, I would want to assume. And I know you would laugh sarcastically, but you've seen she's made headlines for the better part of, the week, simply because she made this move. Well, Jubilee has downplayed that. We have seen the likes of, Nyeri Town Member of Parliament, Ngujiru Wambogo, pointing a finger at her and saying that, well, she just is trying to find a way of, standing her ground, in as much as we all acknowledge that maybe she's not able to do the same. I do not know what you make of this move, and that is in relation to what the mountain then is likely to declare.
May I tell you that the mountain speaks in a very unique manner. And the mountain is one of the people who are now realizing that it is important to elect people with integrity. So much so that they have realized that their hard-earned money is always embezzled when you elect the wrong individuals. And it is true, Waiguru has been the headlines, but she has, for the better part of her political career, she has been the headlines for the wrong reasons. She has been the headlines for embezzlements of the NIS. She has been the headlines when we moved to impeach her because of embezzlements. And now she is in the headlines again for joining the team that thrives, a team that embraces thrives in corruption, embraces corruption, speaks not about corruption, sees no evil about corruptions, embraces those people who are corrupt. That would not be one of the reasons that one would be so happy to be associated with. But I would then want to tell you that she's not one of those persons who will make or guide the mountain in the manner in which we are going to vote. Remember, she's just a John come late. There are those guys who own the mountain, and they have not yet spoken. And at their most opportune time, they will still guide us. They will still tell us, man, we need to do A, B, C, D. And by the way, allow me or permit me to mention something. That in the mountain where I come from, culturally, we are so much inclined to Mudhamaki.
Okay.
Mudhamaki is a leader, and Mudhamaki is not necessarily President Kenyatta. He's in a person who has been given the staff of leadership. We call it Mudhegi. Two, we also listen to Jamba, those guys who are brave. Thirdly, we listen to Itonga, those guys who are rich.
Okay.
And being rich means that you have your cows, you have your sheep, you have your goats.
The Mount Kenya Foundation?
That you can be able to account for.
The foundation?
I don't want to mention the foundation, but I'm only saying that those are the key
people
pillars.
that you listen to,
the key pillars that we listen to.
And you think Waiguru doesn't fall anywhere there?
If you're not among that particular group, and mark you, in Mount Kenya region, we don't adore those people who have become rich through the means of embezzlement.
Okay.
In matter of fact, we so much abhor theft of public resources or your neighbor's resources to an extent that if that happened in the past, one would be put in a beehive and you are made to roll down the hill so that you completely die.
Okay.
You understand? You understand what I mean? That tells you that we abhor theft, that you are put together with the bees and you are made to roll down the hill.
Okay.
So that we completely get rid of you and banish you from the community because you are stinking, you are toxic, you are undesirable character. That is exactly what will happen to the people. So we do not listen to those people who have stolen from public resources.
At what level do you declare that they have indeed stolen? I mean, if we are to look at the first family, and we're not trying to say that there's anything questionable about what they have, but we have asked you this before. What makes you, conclude that a person, is a corrupt individual, and especially when they're walking out scot-free? You remember what you said, that sometimes we need to question, I mean, how have you managed to get this and that and everything?
Important.
I mean, could we be pushed to levels of looking at the first family in this case then?
Yes, we could. And of course, we could also call them to account. But remember, Mzee Jomo Kenyatta started as a meter reader. So we have a history of where he started.
But the DP as well started as...
Yes,
selling chicken.
Yes.
No. Okay, well, why Kate? Okay, right. You want to go back to the Kanu days, right?
As I pass it over to you,
okay.
The chicken business is a wash business because if you look at his lifeline or lifetime,
yes,
the chicken business emerged in 2017, and then in 2017 you are making a return of 1.5 million every day, so you are making a return of 45 million every month, so you are making about 3.5 billion every year.
Every year.
Men, you need to tell that to the birds. Mheshimiwa, over to you.
I think on the issue of chicken selling, I want to say it here and now.
It's a lie.
It's a lie.
Okay.
It's a lie because he himself admitted that his first car, he was allocated a plot in Eldoret by the late President Moi.
Yes.
And he sold it, and that's how he got his first car. So he was winned on public resources.
That was not corruption then.
It was
that was
corruption.
Just, was it?
It was outright corruption.
Is that corruption? If I come today and I give you something,
taking public land.
What is the guarantee that was...
and then selling it, which was the way they were doing it in the Moi days.
Okay, yes. So who's to blame in this case, him or the president?
The giver and the receiver.
He was wind on it, so he thinks...
you cannot blame the receiver.
He was wind on it, so he thinks it's okay.
Yes. How many times have we said we can't point a finger at President Uhuru Kenyatta because he came and found that this...
No, the thing is, for Uhuru,
yes,
he was a toddler when his father was president. His father might have stolen. Even when you look at the Pandora's papers, there's nowhere he's mentioned.
Yes.
All those things, even it's his mother who owns what and what. He's a beneficiary. In other words, if I write my will now and say that my son so-and-so will inherit this when I've gone, my son might not know where I got that from.
So the DP would have said no to this land that was accorded to him?
If he had principles.
What if...
This thing of selling chicken is a lie, and I'll even be rude about this.
Okay.
That time is when we had very serious ethnic clashes. And they were very rampant in what was then Eldoret North constituency. They chased away very many lawyers from their land, and their chickens were left roaming. Those were the chickens he was selling.
Oh, yeah? Well...
So, this thing,
okay,
it's just somebody wants to build an image. So in the process of building an image, so they can actually resonate with the downtrodden, that's part of how to build an image in politics. But as the Swahili say, fumbo lifumbwe kumjinga.
All right, but so I still ask this question.
For me, I think, like in the case of Anne Waiguru, I was even shocked when she was elected as a governor.
Okay.
I thought, oh God, what's happened with the Murang'a people?
But you see, this is the irony. When Wakili here says that the people of the mountain really do not like individuals that are, engaged on matters graft, yet they proceed to elect.
That's why I was
shocked.
shocked.
Then you ask a question as to how genuine that statement could be.
That's why
then
I was shocked.
I make an observation on it, and Mheshimiwa, I think you woke up on the right foot because he's very candid with the truth. That the lawyers were evicted. And Makio, you might want to note that if you look at the TGRC report and you look at the Akiwumi report, of 1992 and 1997.
Yeah.
No, is it Kiluki report or a Kiumi? And then you also look at the post-election violence report. You can see there's been a massive extermination of non-Kalenjins in that particular area.
Yeah.
And it's an issue that is still not yet addressed. So at the end of the day, people benefit with about 100 acres of land from IDPs. They go and set up a business, then they come and start telling us they are selling chicken. You know, they start telling us the chicken is earning 1.5 million. You know, they start mocking us. Simply because if Ruto becomes a president, in the unlikely event, he's going to lead a very extractive regime. Extractive regime because, as Mheshimiwa says, this is a person who was weaned with milk that was milked from a stolen cow. So his DNA is completely wired in matters of theft, because at the end of the day, if he says that he bought his first car by selling the land that was allocated to him by Moi, then he needs to tell us whether that was public land, because he never claimed, he never proclaimed. But as I sum up, we elected Governor Waiguru knowing that she had burdens and baggages with the NYS, simply because she was imposed on us by the regime that was then.
Is it so?
Yes, it was imposed on us. People were misrepresented with the facts. I don't want to say what she used to say in her campaigns, because I might be accused. But she misrepresented the facts, the people, and now the people have learned that, oh, this was not just a sheep. It was a leopard in sheep, or it was a hyena. Yeah. But now going to the first family, and I am not holding brief for anyone. At least we have a history of where they have come from. We have a history of their huge investments. I've occasionally found Brookside collecting milk from my village. But I have not gone to Kenchik and eaten a sugoi chicken. You understand? Okay. So we have, if you go to Quickmart today, or if you go to Kuala supermarket, whichever supermarket you might want to visit, you'll see some Brookside milk. That shows that these are guys who are enterprising. These are guys who are entrepreneurs. And they never just stopped where Mzee Kenyatta left them. The question of land, we all must understand that after the fall of the Union Jack, there was to be appropriation of land, and the appropriation of land was actually negotiated in Lancaster. How will the appropriation of land take effect? So it was then agreed that Her Majesty government would loan Kenyan government, so that the people who are able as at that particular time would then access loans from government, use that loan to buy the white islands that the settlers were leaving them behind, so that there could then be a compensation or a price for the appropriated land back to the Africans. So those persons who are there and who had the opportunity actually bought this land. So it is erroneous for someone to say that this first family actually stole. I heard the other day when the Mount Kenya Foundation met at Safari Park, and the person who was addressing the gathering was Dr. S.K. Macharia. He said that he can actually, anybody who says that the Kenyatta family stole land, Dr. S.K. Macharia was actually, I think, the chairman or something of the resettlement something. And he said, go to the archives, check it out, and you'll find it out. So let's not say, when you say that you are a thief, then you start also pointing at me, oh, thief, thief, thief. So that at the end of the day, we do not know where the thief is.
But you see,
and who is the thief?
We are not short of the laws. It's the Akiwumi Commission of Inquiry, tribal clashes, just to clarify on what you were asking. Yes. This is what we keep asking, and this is what I've asked you before, Wakili, as a legal mind. We do not fall short of laws to address the aspect of, of corruption in the country. We have investigative bodies. We have high intelligence in regards to what plays out in the country. We have called for lifestyle audit on numerous occasions, starting from the level of the president in vain. So we honestly cannot quite be very clear on what plays out in regards to dealing with the aspect of corruption in the country. And therefore it becomes extremely hard to speak of the same. That's the reason why they say you cannot dictate or purport to say that the DP is corrupt. You cannot purport to say that the governor is corrupt or the first family is corrupt or, you know, got what it is that they have today from process of corruption, yet we still have them walk scot-free. Then what are we saying?
We are simply saying, because before I pass over to Mheshimiwa, that yes, we have a problem in this country of corruption. And whenever we attempt to deal with it, the whole process is politicized. And that's why I say that one of the legacy of President Kenyatta will be that he actually attempted to fight this dragon, and the dragon fought back. And you can see, we are not saying that so and so is corrupt, but they also say, show me your friends and I'll tell you whom you are.
Okay.
So if you associate with witches, then we'll all say that you're a witch. If you see something that walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, and waits like a duck, then that thing is highly probable that it's a duck. So if you associate with the corrupt seeks refuge in you. The corrupt seeks solace in you. You do not condemn them. You do not speak about your policy on corruption. Then you must be a corrupt person. That's the conclusion.
Maybe we should be speaking like Wanjigi, Fagia Water, because evidently who can stand today? Mahesh, as we close on that one.
I think the problem that has happened is that there are very many good people in this country. In fact, the majority of the Kenyans are good people. It's just that our electoral system is crafted in such a way that whoever has the money is the one that gets elected. And that's where the danger is. So we really need to look at our electoral system. What are we using as a yardstick to get people elected? And I think unless we solve that problem, we'll still end up with these kinds of people at the helm. And when they're at the helm, they'll perpetrate the same vices. They will not be able to change them. Because I can assure you, Safaricom always gives out goodies. Maybe they give you some free bundles, they give you some free airtime, they give you some whatever. But if, in a week, if you total how much they have spent, it's far, far less than what some politicians are spending on a week's tour of the country. So there's a problem there. There's a problem there. Where are they getting that money? So I think we need to be very careful. And Linda, I remember one time we were here with one Barack Muluka, and he mentioned that Kenya is slowly degenerating into a kakistocracy.
Kakistocracy, yes.
And I fear that come the next election, if Kenyans don't change the way they elect their leaders, we'll be deeply into a kakistocracy. And that to extricate ourselves will be very difficult. I hate to think that Kenya can easily become a failed state. You see, you say you are a deputy president, and you know that the economy was doing badly, before Corona, COVID and so on. So COVID just tipped it over. But you use that to say, now you see, this government is not functioning.
It's not functioning, and you're the deputy.
And you're the deputy, and you are in there all along. Then you selectively tell people, sinileta hii barabara hapa, sinileta hii stima hapa, without reminding people that that's what you borrowed. And that's what's hitting the economy. And you are part of it. So it's this kind of thing is what I'm saying, that Kenyans are in trouble. And unless the voters wake up. But unfortunately, there's a recent study, I think it was the papers yesterday, that showed that majority of Kenyans didn't go past primary school. Now in a situation like that, you need a leader who thinks that way, to know that these people need to be given proper leadership, not taken advantage of.
All right.
And that's the problem we are having.
You know, you speak of that.
People taking advantage of the gullible voters, and that's where the country is. And if we don't watch out, because when I look at the country now, and I'll read the history from independence onwards, the pre-independence struggle, soon after independence, you look at the principled kind of people that were leaders. When I go through the Hansard, I read
the
performance of those members of parliament then, and the research they used to do, the information that was at their fingertips, and how they used to direct things, therefore putting the government at that time
in check.
Then I look at it now, because I've been privileged to be in parliament now for 3 terms, And I've seen the deterioration, even in my presence. So it's something that Kenyans must take seriously, especially for this coming election. And I think there's already a warning shot. The voter registration. How many are going to register? You realize that there's a problem. People have lost interest in voting because they think they'll vote and things will go there any way they will. So and they will not benefit from anything. So it's a bit of a problem because we politicians have reduced it to individual benefit so that we can hand out goodies to individuals.
Right.
While we should actually be working for the society.
Right.
And it's a big difference.
Yes.
If you work for the society, then you should be judged by what you've delivered for the society. But we've reduced to a point where what you've given an individual is what matters. And I think that kind of politics is not going to get us anywhere. So whether we are talking about Anne Waiguru, whether we are talking about anything, it's just that we've got it wrong. And unless we change, we are actually on a downhill.
All right, Wakili, that's where we are.
Yes.
It's a reality, and it breaks one's heart even more when this is being acknowledged by, the people we have elected themselves. They go to parliament, they even question the kind of debates that they accord right there. And we ask ourselves, just what will it take for us to have a reverse of the same? Especially when we speak about those that we have elected, when we speak about reports that speak of, we had opportunities, about 300 opportunities to have our people go and work in the United Kingdom, and only 10 of these that were selected out of the 300 were able to make it to the next level, and not because they are not good medics, but simply because even on the basics of English, they were not able to sail through. And even when we speak about the appointive positions, forget about the elective ones. So people who have been appointed with questionable integrity, people who go through vetting, people who've gone to levels where they now campaign at a point where they're supposed to, give service to the people of Kenya.
We must all understand that we have different concepts of political regimes. And we have each political regime, depending on its concept, has its shortcomings, pros and cons, and it has the ability to deliver or not to deliver. If you build a political concept around an individual where you make that person a demigod, and that this person is the only individual who can rescue this country from the troubles in which we are purportedly facing currently, then you realize that you shall be creating a demigod, and the risk of that is that that particular person will then lead an extractive regime, like I said, and an extractive regime has no place for strengthening of the institutions, because an extractive regime is one that abhors and is very apprehensive of the whole principles of accountability and transparency. So the risk that we are running, and the reason why we are having people like Oscar Sudi becoming a member of parliament when he actually has no papers, is because our institutions have been subsumed by the political machinations, and they have failed to do what they are supposed to do. But granted that this does not just happen as coincidence or by default. It is by design that extractive regimes do not want strong institutions that they cannot be called to account. So it is our work to make sure that we democratize our institutions, and the process of democratization of our institutions then means that we must be able to strengthen them so that they may be able to stand out and protect our democracy. For example, how would you build a democracy around an individual who is a legislator who gets into parliament to legislate on issues of tax ceiling, and he does not understand 1 + 1 or 1 × 2 is what?
So papers in this case really count. I mean, I am told that Sudi, and go to Hansard and go to the performance of the members of parliament. I am told that Sudi has done so well. That is at his level of.
Where has he done so well?
You need to know this, Linda.
And the rules of the before you come in.
I'm in that parliament.
All right.
I know some members of parliament who have done very well on the ground. But this is the reason why they have done well. The politics of patronage. In the sense that if you are supporting me, I make sure that the national coffers are emptied in your constituency.
Okay.
So that you can build this, build that, build that, at the expense of other constituencies.
So how much...
then when you say anything, they say, you know, that fellow knows how to look for...
But how much of access does you know, the DP have to these coffers?
At that time they were.
All right.
And even now he still is. Remember, he's still the DP.
Yes.
And he has got his people all over, appointed all over. So these are things, these are what I call perception issues, so that some people can be given that limelight. But I can assure you, I know why some top leaders prefer people like those. You see, college education has got something interesting. It sort of molds somebody's character to the point where you have your consciousness is awoken.
Yeah.
Now, when your consciousness is not awoken, you don't have that kind of whatever feeling about anything. And as I told you earlier on, the survey that was done, majority of Kenyans did not go beyond primary.
Yeah.
So those kinds of people can be led in any direction. And that's what happens now when you get these people. And you can even look at the words they utter when they're on a political stage. You just listen to them and you can realize, whoops, these uncouth statements, where are they coming from? Now look at those people with those uncouth statements and see what Wakili is trying to tell you. What is their level of consciousness? And that's related to education.
Okay.
You see, somebody can go to university, not necessarily to get a degree, but you can even drop out of university like Bill Gates, but it has actually ironed you out and your consciousness has been awoken.
Right.
So there's a benefit in that kind of education thing. Not to say that it's only education that helps. There are some people who learn without with what they call school of hard knocks, and they learn to be refined leaders, like Churchill and so on. But remember, even Churchill took a very long time before he could get into parliament. In the UK, he lost very many times because the Britons could not see how they can elect him. It took a long time before even he became prime minister. But take this case of only 10 out of 300 passing the UK exam, and now we are trying to think that they are failures. The truth of the matter is they were computer illiterate. Because the test was being done online. Now, if you don't have those online skills, then you will lose out. So they should have given actually...
They say they lost based on the aspect of grammar, you know, basic English.
It could be grammar.
Yes.
It could. By the way, some of these days you listen to a university graduate and you wonder, my God, what kind of grammar is this? You know? So it is, and then now add on that computer literacy, because you are doing an exam online, which is timed. You have to accomplish this by this time, you have to accomplish this by this time. It's not that they are bad clinical officers, it's not that they are bad medics, it's just that they are not computer literate. So the promise of laptops comes in very important. So those who didn't believe in laptops can answer to this. That's the computer illiteracy our graduates are facing. And so what you do impacts on the individuals who are supposed to benefit from it. So these medics actually lost out because of computer illiteracy and bad grammar. So what they need to do is listen to a lot of English radio stations and read newspapers and polish up their grammar. And then they must spend more time not on social media, but on proper learning some computer literacy. That's what failed them. So it's not good to just blame them that even our medics
are not as good.
No, they are good. It's just that
they lost out
on two things: the grammar and computer literacy. How to actually be able to, because when you are doing an interview online, if you are not up to speed, leave alone on grammar, because you can be good even on grammar, but if you are not up to speed on how to use online whatevers, you'll even mess up your grammar.
That's true.
Because remember, when you write something, you actually go through and edit to make sure that it's correct. Now, when you are doing it online and it's timed, you will send something that's wrong grammatically. So that we should not just blame them, but we should also tell the Ministry of Health that was wrong. They should have first of all informed these people that you are going to go in for this online interview, so that many of them can go through it before not necessarily the questions that are coming, but so that they can know what to expect.
Right.
Because you imagine you end up there, the only time you've been on what you call online is when you're on social media, WhatsApp and blah, blah, blah. And there you are now. You're doing an exam. It's crazy.
All right, Wakili, back to you.
Yes, yes.
I catch your line of thought. That is, as we discuss the kind of leadership that we get. But you know, it's even worse when you realize that we have IEBC that is supposed to scrutinize the papers of these individuals. We have, you know, members of parliament who vet some of these individuals that get to these particular positions. Yet we still have individuals of questionable integrity. Would we then say that is a case of, you know, people being imposed, like you rightfully put it, that maybe the likes of Waiguru were imposed to the people of Kirinyaga?
Oh yes. And of course, I told you something that you must go and read about the extractive regime as captured by the book Why Nation Fails.
Yes.
In that book, the author has expounded all these factors. Why an extractive regime would not want a functional democracy, and why and a functional democracy means that the persons who are the drivers of democracy themselves are not functional. For example, people like Oscar Sudi. And of course, these extractive regimes make sure that they compromise the institutions, that the effectiveness and the efficacy of the institutions is compromised. So we end up getting people who are garbage. And I've come to realize that politics thrives in garbage. That garbage in, garbage out, that is where politics is all about. Politics do not want people who are principled. People will say, no, this cannot happen. Politics want people who are going to be led by the whims, wishes, and the aspiration of the people that he leads, and not the leader himself. So politics is about whipping emotions to the best of your ability, so that then you can be able to outmaneuver your opponent. We must do a bit of investment in our people in terms of civic education. Telling them, if you elect garbage, you must expect garbage. We must tell them that elections should not be determined on the basis of emotions, but it must be determined on the basis of the credibility and the character of an individual. Because the character of an individual is the one that will determine whether, instead of having one level 5 hospital in Kirinyaga County, we'll be probably having 2 hospitals. Character will determine whether or not we'll have water, we'll have electricity connectivity. There is also the other thing that we must also continually do. We must continually improve our legal regimes. For example, I realize that governors will continue stealing from the people because the county assemblies are not, the county assemblies have been held hostage. They have no financial autonomy, and that's a creation of the law. If you are then telling the person is supposed to have oversight of an individual that you have no financial autonomy, and if you want an allocation even for your salary, the governor will have to make a determination about it. How will that person be able to check that beef? So we need to continually do a bit of introspection in our institutions and in our legal regimes, so that we can then be able to understand where does the rain beat us. For example, this issue of oversight, we must define a mechanism of making sure that our county assemblies have financial autonomy, so that they're able to check on the governor without being twisted and coerced and cajoled to sing the governor's tune. That is why majority of the governors are thieves, because they have no watchmen. And the watchman is fed by the governor, the watchman is clothed by the governor, the watchman is housed by the governor. How will this watchman watch over this person? So we must be able to do a bit of soul searching and realize where all these faults is coming from. But most importantly, let the voter assess. Let him or her assess the person he or she is voting, because that person will determine your future.
You know, it's very interesting, and I've seen it where somebody comes into politics with hardly anything, and within a year or so, they are so rich.
Yeah.
I've seen many MPs, I've seen many MCAs, and you start wondering, is it that we don't work?
But if these people can lobby for goodies to come to their areas, they can as well lobby for goodies for themselves.
You're calling it lobbying. I'm calling it patronage.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's the difference. So I think what we have here is that as a country, especially under the new constitution, we created very many institutions that were supposed to check on the corruption and things like that, ethnicity, negative ethnicity and things like that. But we failed to give those institutions the means to actually implement what their mandate is, such that you find, for example, EACC can only prosecute through the DPP.
Yeah.
So then we should have just made the EACC a department in the DPP's office to make it more convenient.
Right.
Otherwise, the DPP will look at it and say, no, there's not enough evidence here.
Yeah.
Then you've got to realize that they said all those offices are in Kenya. They are not en masse. They are here in Kenya.
Right.
The corruption problem in the country permeates through all these institutions, and I'm sorry to say, including the judiciary.
All right.
This corruption is not just among the politicians. This corruption is not just among the business people. This corruption permeates every sphere of the country's fiber.
Yeah.
So that is where we have a problem. So we need to relook at those laws that formed these institutions so we can actually give them teeth to bite.
All right.
Because like now blaming the cohesion, whatever commission, is what Kenyans are doing. But they are not reading the law that created that commission.
That commission.
The law that created that commission is defective, is deficient.
Mheshimiwa, hold it right there.
Them have teeth to bite.
To bite.
Then
Okay.
we blame them. Like take the case of IEBC.
How about we take a quick break?
IEBC has actually refused to clear some people to run. Then they have been cleared either by EACC or cleared by the judiciary.
By the judiciary. And so the IEBC twisted in this particular case. So we take a short break and then we actually come on and discuss the aspect of IEBC and it saying that it's underfunded. Less 14.6 billion. While we could say our election is very expensive, the question is, if they complain of being underfunded, what is the guarantee then that we can trust them to conduct this particular process? That should be after the short break.
Oh, hi guys. Sorry, you found me 5 minutes before I started recording, but anyway, so most of you have been asking me why I started Lady CLC 19 with Joy Rongo. I have also had my own share of pain. I know how it feels to want to give up. This is basically here to speak hope and inspire somebody who's going through a rough patch, to tell them that they can turn their pain into power. Our guests are normally here to share their experiences so that you can know somebody else did it, so you can also come out of it stronger and better. Let me go to my recording, and remember to always stay tuned every Saturday at 8:30 p.m.
Undertaking husband duties on a boyfriend tender.
Guys, with bromance, do you share your woman with the bro?
Have a sister, give me your sister. I show you how these things are done.
So you go release and be like,
Men supporting each other, not only financially, but also socially.
Don't mingle with women you can't deal with.
Is there really a formula for dating and marriage?
Some men are procreational, some men are recreational.
Every Wednesday on TV47, the Men's Conference brings you a cocktail of top-notch advice to breed alpha males for alpha females in the society.
All right, welcome back to the broadcast. We still have Wakili Ndegwanjiru and Dr. Eselisi Miu as we look at what is happening politically right here in the country. I wanted to discuss the judiciary and the executive, but not before we talk of this conversation of IEBC, now that you raise it, Mheshimiwa. And IEBC says that they're short of 14.6 billion. So that's a deficit. 14.6 billion is not just any amount of money. And therefore, you know how hugely that can impact on the results of what these people are performing. Are you confident that with such a huge deficit and with such huge complaints that the IEBC can deliver legitimate elections?
Linda, I can assure you that it's just a matter of time. Kenyans will get fed up and disband IEBC and form another one.
Oh yeah?
Because it's been a leech. It's really leached people's money. And okay, there are some explanations like, oh, because of the fraudulent nature of Kenyans and the elections, they have to have a special ballot paper with very many security factors, which makes the ballot paper more expensive.
Yeah.
That's just an excuse. I happen to have been on Public Accounts Committee and looked at quite a number of things that IEBC has done. You clearly see that there's something wrong. Their procurement, who they procure from, and the cost, there is something wrong. So it's not a very... Do you think anybody, with the current situation with IEBC, do you think anybody in their right mind would apply for a job there? But some people are applying for a job there. Because why?
Yes.
Why? Because there are opportunities there to actually make money.
Oh yeah?
Not earn money, but make money. So the thing is this, IEBC is a problem. It's part of the problem of the electoral system in this country.
In the country.
It is part of the problem. And I think, as I said, if they don't reform, sooner or later Kenyans will get fed up and say, disband this thing and form a new electoral body. Because there is something inherently wrong. And when there's something wrong with the electoral body, it means that the outcomes of elections will never be correct. And that's where the problem is.
So, someone is asking, the same new electoral body that we'll speak of will definitely appoint Kenyans and not robots. What is the guarantee?
Of course, that's why I said earlier on that this corruption that we are facing in this country permeates every sphere, including people like IEBC. Because like Linda asked this before, take the by-election in Matungu. How can an IEBC officer be beaten and IEBC has never lifted a finger?
A finger, okay.
you know?
Yes.
I mean, and instead, I saw them celebrating their officers for having been resilient through the by-elections. But they didn't take a single step about their assaulted officer, who was an IEBC officer. That tells you something.
There's a big problem. And I mean, the question again would be, Wakili, IEBC has hugely been faulted for the low voter turnout, registration process, that is, so to speak. And I mean, comes to the level of the elections, will definitely fault them. At least Kenyans are known for that. In most cases, you'll find that at least 50 will be in agreement with what has happened, 50 will not be in agreement, and that will largely be attributed to the failures of IEBC. What do you make of, their fears right now in regards to budgeting? And the worst of all, the fact that we do not have Kenyans coming out in large numbers to register as voters. I mean, don't they have information? And should we blame IEBC in this case, knowing very well that we understand our constitutional right or mandate for that matter in terms of voting?
Well, if I were to be fair to the IEBC, I think its mandate stops at taking the measures that will ensure that people register as voters. But as the question of mobilizing people to register, in my view, and I may be wrong, that would be, or rather would take a political dynamic, in the sense that if people do not feel civil enough to go and register voluntarily, then there ought to be some mobilization. And I do not then think that the IEBC should then be the person to do this mobilization. They could do the sensitization, yes, but even the grassroots leadership should then be involved in the process of mobilization. For example, if you witnessed what happened in 2016, 2017, the political class vigilantly campaigned. They mounted speakers they mounted serious campaign to go and urge people to go and register as voters. What you need to ask yourself is, what has now changed? You must remember in 2013, 2017 election, the 2017 election was not a transitional election. And that is why you saw even the people supporting Jubilee that particular time vigilantly campaigned for people to go and register. But because we are now in a transition and we're in a bit of uncertainty, we do not know what happens, what the future holds politically. You can see people have gone mum in terms of mobilization.
Yeah.
I don't know whether this failure to mobilize is by default or by design, but I believe it is those people who are looking for votes should have the responsibility of having a clamor for people to go and register as voters. In my view, this apathy is informed by some facts that Kenyans are asking themselves, why should I go and register as a voter? And in 2013, I was promised laptops and we never saw them. Why should I register as voters? And in 2013, we were told that we'll have Galana Kulalu running for food security so that we may not die of hunger, and I'm still dying of hunger. For example, how would you mobilize a person in Turkana to go and register as a voter when that person is busy looking for wild fruits from the forest to save his life and the life of his children and dear ones? How would you mobilize a youth to go and register when that youth is busy looking and trying to fend for his next meal? He is not even certain where it is going to come from. So in my view, this voters' apathy is informed by the failure of the voters to realize and to benefit from the works of his deeds when he cast his vote. Why would you ask a voter, or what would entice a voter in Turkana or in Kirinyaga to go and vote when the roads, the feeder roads are still very much impassable?
But two things involved in this, Wakili.
Yes.
Then in this case, we're likely to have a voter who's tired with the regime and would want change and would be pushed to go and make sure that they vote to change this. On the other hand, would have one that you speak of would decide, you know what is the point after all? How much of an undoing is this then to us as a people?
Well, the two scenarios. One, if the voters is sanitized to go and register as a voter, then we must also sanitize, urge that voter or call upon that voter to assess the person he or she is voting, so that his vote does not get to lost, or so that his vote does not yield. People will not implement a damning program like the Kimorel, but the money will end up in the people's pockets. So in my view, there is need for us to give concrete civic education to our people. And remember, one of the responsibility of county governments and the County Government Act, Section 89, is to provide civic education. So there ought to be money allocated by the county government for the county government to facilitate civic education in the grassroots. It is through civic education that we shall probably inform our people on the kind of the leadership that they want. But remember, that does not happen. Why? Because the political leadership does not want a person who is inquisitive enough to question his deeds and his actions. And they are using the Napoleon mantra. When Napoleon overthrew the monarch, he found that people were quite civil during the 1776 French Revolution. He realized that the civil causes were making people to realize their rights, to clamor for their rights, and to realize their position in terms of governance. And it's because of that being civil that they were able to overthrow King Louis XVI. So what Napoleon did to save his life and his skin is that when he came into power, he made sure that civic education and civil courses were completely banned from the curriculum. He started teaching people mathematics and science courses, so that science courses do not awaken your consciousness of realizing that you need to be governed in a certain manner. So the governors have frustrated civic education so that they can make sure that people are not informed enough, so that they can actually continue having misrule without anybody questioning them. For example, If you go to Kirinyaga and tell the people in Kirinyaga that Article 201 provides that there must be prudent use of public resources, and this governor has not used that money appropriately, and you go with the facts and you show them the facts how the money has been misappropriated, do you think that person will say will vote for that governor? He will not vote for that governor, obviously. And therefore, do you think that governor will allocate money that will end up making sure that he or she is not elected? No. So we are in a system that has been designed in a manner that we are supposed to fail. And we are failing for the benefit of the political class. And I must urge the voters and the people who are listening to us this morning, for them that believes in us and whatever we are saying, because not everybody that we are here to please, that they must realize that this country belongs to them. This country has been captured by the political class, and that we must redeem this country from this capture. Yes. Okay.
Mahesh, you know, that is a really important point, but also at a time when, you know, you can't compare with the eras back then. At a time when, you know, the voter is more informed. That's the irony. It appears like the voter is more informed at this particular era. I mean, it's an era of social media. It's an era where everyone is conversing about the politics of the day. It's an era where we find youths are hugely involved on matters politics as opposed to what used to happen back then. Where, I mean, it's a gray line. How clear can we say that? Well,
I think the youths back then were more involved in politics than the youths now.
All right.
Because remember, at independence time, most of those fellows who are at the forefront were actually young people, young men and women. So I think the youths then were more involved and they were more informed, better informed. But right now people have been socialized in such a way that they look at politics as an avenue for making money, and that is a problem. So I think we should realize, like you take the case of IEBC, the timing of the registration was all wrong, because most of these youngsters who got IDs had just gone to college. They didn't look at the COVID calendar, which has changed the education calendar, and then match it with them. So now they are rushing into universities with kits for people to register. Now these fellows are busy in class. Most of them don't live on campus. The college life is totally different. So I think they fail to look at the situation as it is. So I think what we are facing right now, and I agree with Wakili, that perhaps the book Why Nations Fail should become a set book
for people to,
for entrance to any college. You must have read Why Nations Fail.
Wow. All right. Now, I will still speak about the IEBC, Mahesh. Let's also loop in this conversation on, Ruto allies who are going for top Uhuru men in relation to them campaigning for Right Honorable Raila Odinga. Honorable Rigathi Gachagua says this: Wafula Chebukati asked to write to the president or to explain why IEBC cannot work with CS Matiang'i as he is Raila Odinga's supporter. We have seen the IEBC, the Interior, Ministry, and of course the Judiciary coming together in preparation of the 2022 general election, of course guaranteeing the people security and proper preparation, or so to speak. What do you make of this as we come to Wakili? Maybe we can start with you and then we get to, yes.
What I would say is that all those are good things to hear.
Yeah.
I would say it's a good message from the wrong messenger. Because if you've been busy gallivanting throughout the country, campaigning out of time, bribing voters, then you stand up to say such things. I mean, you have got no leg to stand on, completely, because I mean.
But Mahesh, they say even when a madman is speaking, listen to them and pick what benefits you.
That's what I've said. Yes. I've listened to them, and I'm saying
good message,
wrong messenger. And they have got no leg to stand on.
So how do we pick the? And someone cements your argument.
They should learn to do the right thing. Then we can listen to them.
Kennedy Kaskon says this, yeah? Yes. What you allowed to happen in 2017 will repeat itself. NASA cried in 2017 about CS Matiang'i and others campaigning for government, but nothing really happened. Now, the members added extra budget to tear gas to prepare for demonstrations in 2017. So today, we're having the same CSs campaigning now for NASA. Why the complaints?
That's double speak. And of course, there are those people who believe in proper procedures like Mheshimiwa and the rest. And I've severally heard people like Mheshimiwa Martha Karua, Mheshimiwa Orengo, Mheshimiwa Kiraito Murungi, Mheshimiwa CS Munya. I've severally heard people like Amolo Otiende making and people like Wetangula making very serious positions that you must craft laws that you can promise to your worst enemy. And even the policies that you come up with, you must be able that you can actually promise them on your worst enemy, and your worst enemy will still be comfortable. Yeah. Because whatever things that just go round and round and round, and they remain the same. So if you are comfortable when in 2017, 2016, when government was using the same system to deal with the purported menace at that particular time, or the perceived problem at that particular time, then you should also be comfortable at this time to.
But you're a constitutional lawyer,
yes.
To be honest. This is what the Constitution dictates.
Yes.
If we are to follow the aspect of rule of law, this is totally misplaced, and maybe that's the reason why Mheshimiwa says that it's a good message.
How is it misplaced? And you cannot replace a government minister, and the law allows the creation of such kind of intergovernmental committees. Remember, even as much as we say the IBC is independent, how is it independent and it's acting within the axis of the government? It is still revolving around government axis. It requires allocation from the government. It requires police to man the polling station. How will you manage the police the police without involving CS Matiang'i?
And there's really nothing wrong with that. But then, in the event that CS Matiang'i is outrightly out there campaigning for a specific individual.
But is there a neutral mind? Is there a neutral mind? It will be somebody.
There's no neutral mind, but you do not go out there showing that you're not a neutral mind. That's
but is CS Matiang'i a voter? Didn't he vote for President Kenyatta? Probably even voted for Raila Odinga.
But is he not a civil servant as well?
But he's a voter. There is Article 2038 is clearly defined. There is no exemption in law that once you become a government minister, that you should not become a voter.
But then Mheshimiwa come in on this one.
Is the deputy president part of the executive?
He is part of the executive.
Is he campaigning?
He is campaigning for himself and not involved anyway in the processes of preparing for the election. We need to go back to the Constitution and look at what it dictates in regards to the same. I need to get that clause as we continue with the conversation. One? Yes, that speaks of, the civil servants and at what point. And I mean, evidently, even the rule is that, well, at some point in time, you have to resign.
But Matiang'i is not a civil servant.
But he is part of the cabinet. He's appointed by the president. The president himself is not even clear on what side he's supporting.
Matiang'i is not under the Public Service Commission.
But listen to this. The president himself, he is an appointee and, of course, serves in government. To be honest, we understand that it's not proper. There has to be a clear line because this is a person who's supposed to serve the people of Kenya.
Yes.
Contrary to what it is that he's actually doing right now.
I'm not able to locate your argument for purposes of.
I'm actually not supposed to make an argument in this case. People are supposed to make an argument and make the people of Kenya understand clearly whether there is a thin line, and I mean whether this is an upholding of the rule of law in the sense that you have, cabinet secretaries coming out to support a certain individual in public domain. And how many times have we spoken about using government machinery for campaigns? It is not right. But is it right? Is it right?
Is government machineries for campaigns? What happens? Is Karen where they are all going, not a
government
resource?
It is a public resource. It
so
is.
Why are they
so they have all gone wrong. Why are you countering this? And why? At what point, Mheshimiwa, then did you say that this is a good argument? At what point? What are the basis of your argument when you consider this as a good argument?
The argument
that the fact that there's a problem. The only problem is that it's the messenger that is bringing.
Because that messenger is actually part of the problem.
But now, what is this problem that we're talking about that you're trying to counter when I say?
What we are looking at here is. Like I would like to paraphrase what Mohisa Kitui said, that we reached a point in Kenya where the politicians should start serving the mwananchi, not the mwananchi serving the
politicians. All right.
And I think that's where we are at. And the situation we are seeing here is that people who have benefited from a certain misbehavior, now because the shoe is on the other foot, they feel disenfranchised, now they complain about it.
All right.
I think that's what muddies the waters completely. Because that's what I called lack of principles. Because these are people who should have known it was wrong from the word go. But now that is the shoe is on the other foot, now they complain.
Okay.
It could be wrong, yes. Whatever they're saying, they could be right. But they are doing it out of convenience, not out of conviction, not out of principle. So this unprincipled kind of thing, and then it makes headlines, it doesn't help us.
It doesn't.
I think I would like to also tell the media, I've seen a deterioration, especially in the print media, because they don't seem to analyze anything. They just throw things.
But even in the Elections Act, let's speak about the Elections Act. Yes.
Like they should have been able to tell us that this is what the Election Act says.
It dictates.
This is what it dictates. But this is what these people are doing. And this is what they did before.
Yes.
So that at least we can have a more balanced whatever. But right now, because we need to sell these newspapers now that with the online media,
yes,
I'm sure the newspaper sales are going low.
It's got nothing to do with the newspaper. It's got everything to do with what the DP, of course, supporters are accusing these CSs on. And
that's what I'm saying.
Yes.
The DP supporters are accusing the CSs about it. But you know, they are supporting the DP, who himself has broken those same dictates.
All right, let's speak about this as a constitutional
Are they doing it out
lawyer.
of just their convenience?
A cabinet secretary shall be the link between the State Department and the President or Parliament, as the case may be. Each cabinet secretary shall be responsible for the functions assigned to him or her by the President, the Constitution, this Act, or any other written law. In this case, we understand of the clarity of what cabinet secretaries are supposed to do.
But it's silent on whether they should do
it. Is silent. That's why we're now coming to the constitutional lawyer.
Yes.
Do we have lacuna in law in this case?
There is no lacuna because government is constituted and formed by politicians.
Yes.
This idea of President Kenyatta's choice was that my cabinet will not be constituted of politicians. That was a personal choice because that's how he wanted to run his government, but it was not a dictate by the law.
Yeah.
The law did not say that you cannot appoint a politician, and that is why someone like C.S. Munya ended up being in the cabinet. So once you become a cabinet secretary, you don't leave your political mind behind, and you do not denounce your political rights, because it's not one of the requirements that you should denounce your political rights as and when you join cabinet. So in my view, government must function and the state must live. And when the state lives, the staples must be verily cleaned. And we are cleaning the staples. It means that we must put into place proper mechanisms that will ensure that we have free and fair elections. What should be of most concern to them is whether there shall be a free and fair elections. Are there indicators that the IBC is not gearing up towards a free and fair elections? How will the involvement of CS Matiang'i compromise a free and fair elections? Yet he participated in the same elections in 2017. CS for information, Musheru also participated. So in my view, their remedy or their recourse will be, if IBC will not be able to deliver a free and fair elections, then they have a recourse to go to the Supreme Court and challenge that particular process.
Not well conversant with matters law, but at least for the few cases that we've managed to be interested in, there are incidences where someone will say, you know, I'm a person of interest and therefore I would want to rescind. I would not want to be part of this case because of obvious reasons. And in this case then, we have people who are supposed to serve the public, yet they appear to take sides. How can we trust them?
Who is public now?
Public is us.
There is no clear line. Because even those guys who support BABA are members of the public.
And BABA himself is a member of the public as well.
Who require the same service. So you cannot clearly draw a line and say that these are red line, you cannot cross over to this and this place. So in my view, I think they should stop panicking. Let them campaign as they are campaigning. IBC has not indicated to us that the involvement of Matiang'i and CS Musheru will compromise their ability to deliver free and fair elections. So their stomach should stop rumbling and be ready for a contest. Why are they so much afraid? And they are saying that they have their coalition of the hustlers. How will Matiang'i alter the spirit, the undying and presumed undying spirit of the hustler? Let them smell the coffee.
All right, let's take the statement.
IBC has failed.
Right.
Because they should have actually determined by now when campaigns should start. And anybody campaigning out of that time, they should be able to take action.
But how clear is it that this is a campaign and this is not a campaign?
It is obvious it's a campaign by the speeches you make. So this actually, that's why I was saying that I don't think the DP's supporters have got a leg to stand on to talk about
to question this.
Because they themselves are gallivanting throughout the country.
Right.
Campaigning.
All right, and just to probably cement your arguments.
Bribing voters.
All right, Wakili, you know, in defense of the same and maybe cementing your argument at some point in time that these are not public servants and therefore they are answerable to the president. The CS says, that is CS Wamola says that we are the president's workers. We are appointed to assist the president. If you have been appointed to assist the president, can you resist the president? Well, if they say, or if he says the handshake between him and Raila will bring peace in the country, then our CSs will join in him. So that's evidently speaking of where President Uhuru Kenyatta stands politically?
Well, I would not speak for the presidency. I have no ability to do so. I don't have the instructions even to enter.
But if you can argue as though you're in court.
Yeah, I can only probably say that there is all indication that this country will not be safe if it is left to the hands of William Ruto.
Why?
Because of the people that he associates with.
What are these indications that you speak
and
of?
Because of the fact that he actually abandoned and absconded his duty midway so that he can start preparing for the elections of 2022. Why do I say again it will not be safe? The last time I was here, I said that William Ruto needs to give us a guarantee that he's going, once or in the unlikely event he becomes president, that he's going to uphold Article 40, which speaks about the right to the ownership of property. I say so because Akiumi's report, the TJRC reports, and the post-election violence reports indicates that people were evicted from Eldoret North, where he was a member of parliament. To date, he has never commented about it. He has never condemned it. He has never even made an attempt to say that those guys who are evicted should then go back to their land. So in matter of fact, his silence has actually mutilated the sanctity of title, because what happened is people are only left with a title and without land. So as I sum up, the country will not be safe because he is associating with those people who are actually stealing from the coffers of the country. How shall Treasury be safe then if it is left to his hands? We are then simply saying that Deputy President and even Baba must give a guarantee. One, that they shall fight with corruption. He has never spoken about it. At least we credit Baba said the other day that once he becomes president, he's going to fight and jail all corrupt leaders, and that is what is giving some of them rumbling stomachs. Baba and Ruto must give us a guarantee that those people who lost their rights to the ownership of property in the post-election violence and in 1992 and 1997 will be restored back to their land. If they give us that guarantee, we'll all know that we shall be safe, because the right to ownership of property is the epitome of economic development of each and every country.
And the other time we were here with Honorable Faraman,
yes,
he spoke of a scenario where he's bought land on different parts of the country. And so if we have to have someone who comes in with the conversation that Wakili speaks of, then what happens to this person who's rightfully bought this piece of land? I mean, is it not going to be opening a Pandora's box afresh? And is it possible that we all would address these historical injustices, the aspect of land, in totality and successfully without plunging the country into more trouble?
The solution of the land issue comes from a totally different direction. Kenya needs to industrialize, and industrialize urgently, to remove the pressure from the land. Because right now everybody's means of production is land. So we need to industrialize urgently, remove the pressure from the land, so that all these things become, all these arguments about land become irrelevant. But I agree with the Wakili that anybody intending to vote for His Excellency William Ruto to become president is misguided. Because the deputy president should not be trusted he himself was part of the formation of Jubilee as a behemoth party.
Yeah.
But he did not believe in it. And this is exemplified by the fact that in his own constituency, whoever won the Jubilee ticket is not the one who was elected. The deputy president is represented by an independent candidate whom he underground supported. So he's not to be trusted. He's not to be trusted. That's something,
I didn't know that.
That's something very important that his supporters must follow.
All right.
They should look at that 2017 election to know what exactly happened in the parliamentary elections of now Tarbo constituency. And remember, there have been 3 communities that have been virtually at war for a long time. The Kikuyu, the Kalenjin, the Luo. If the president and the deputy did a handshake that now ushered in Jubilee and brought peace between the Kalenjin and the Kikuyu, what is wrong with the president doing a handshake with Raila to bring peace between the Kikuyu and the Luo?
Okay.
Why should somebody be very, very hurt about that?
All right.
To me, that is creating peace in the country. So I think here, and I dare alert the people intending to vote for the deputy president that they are voting for an unreliable guy.
All right, well, hold it right there as we close.
Yes.
We want to come to the judiciary. I know you want to say something.
Yes, I wanted to give the other reason why Ruto cannot be trusted.
Okay.
Because even in his own economic model, he does not understand it. The other day,
Honorable Kagori Peter is watching and says this is now becoming one-sided because you appear to be all Baba supporters.
No, but we have our opinion.
All right, okay, proceed.
We have our opinion. And you're also reading his comments.
So that means it's coming in to balance the,
he's
the
part
conversation.
Of us.
Yes.
That guy is part of us.
All right.
So Ruto does not understand his bottom-up economic model. And he thinks that he can detach it from the trickle-down model. He says he's going to support the mythical Mama Mboga, the mythical border person, the mythical Kokoteni guy. Now the question is, if he's going to support the mythical Mama Mboga, that means that Mheshimiwa in parliament must allocate money towards that appropriation, right? So we are finding that parliament will allocate money to go to the mythical Mama Mboga. So at the end of the day, it is money coming from the government going to be consumed by the Mama Mboga and the hustler. So at the end of the day, there is no distinction between the bottoms-up economic model and the trickle-down. In matter of fact, the working formula is that of the trickle-down model because money will be allocated by government to go to the hustler.
That's top-down.
Right.
That's top-down. You understand? So his model is completely
more or less like...
It's just semantic.
It's trickle-down.
Just to show people that he thinks smart, the way he thought smart when he promised people the Camarine Stadium, which is not yet in existence.
Hold it. Let's
and then he said, just to make it look good. So he's just coming up with some bravados to make it look good.
Okay, well, that is for the voter then to decide. There's evident, or at least we still have some essence of bad blood that appears to be in existence between the judiciary and the executive. In relation to the last ruling by the judiciary or by the courts, and that of course as to whether we have these 6 judges appointed by President Uhuru Kenyatta or not, the president has appealed in court on this particular ruling of the appointment of the 6 judges. What do you make of the shenanigans that continue to stay? Remember, there is a window to this, and if the president does not proceed to appoint then of course the courts say that they automatically ascend to these particular positions. But of course, upon this appeal, what does it speak?
What I can say is that Kenya is at a bad place. Kenya is at a bad place. I'm no lawyer and I don't want to pretend to know a lot of that. I do make law, but as to implementing it, the lawyers and the judges know best. But as I said earlier, the judiciary, the legislature, the executive are all part of this country.
Yeah.
And whatever problems encompass this country, encompass all these arms of government. That includes corruption, that includes impunity, that includes tribalism, that includes all those things that have been ailing Kenya. So it's wrong for any arm of the government, be it the executive, be it the judiciary, be it the legislature, to pretend that they are holier than thou. So I think we start from there. Because remember, the judiciary is at war with the executive, and the executive is at war with the judiciary.
Yeah.
The judiciary is at war with the legislature is at war with the judiciary. The only common factor there is the judiciary versus the executive versus the legislature.
Yeah.
There's something wrong somewhere, and we need to look at it and see what is it that's wrong. Because if you go into the history books, you will find that what happened to Indira Gandhi in India is what's happening here.
Okay.
Where Indira Gandhi was at war with the legislature, and the legislature was at war with Indira Gandhi. And it didn't end up very well. In fact, it ended with the assassination of Indira Gandhi. So this is not a good place to be. And I think what I can say is that the judiciary needs to be more alive to the dynamics of the country. The executive also needs to be alive to the dynamics of the country. For us in the legislature, we need to be alive to that. Because if we are going to make law, which is forever being annulled by the judiciary, then what are we doing?
Right.
So I think there is something that's not right here. And I'm afraid to say this kind of situation does not augur well for the future of the country. So the head of the judiciary, the head of the executive, and the head of the legislature need to put their heads together. Yes, they are supposed to be independent, but they are actually interdependent. They are not just independent like that.
And the Constitution
so
says
we need to look at this. It's not a very good place to be for any country.
Right.
It's not a very good place to be for any country, and I can dare say we are playing with fire.
Wakili,
Yes.
the Constitution dictates that they complement each other in their functions, but at the expense of the rule of law?
Well, there is no single organ of government that must be allowed to operate outside the armpits of the law. Because the moment we allow government organs to operate outside the armpits of the law, we'll be ushering this country into anarchy and chaos, and they will become just a pariah state. So in my view is that there must be serious thinking of how to enhance political and civil equilibrium between all these organs. And one organ must not then decide that it's going to prefect other organs, because there is what we call separation of powers, but this separation of powers must exist within the realm of checks and balances. Checks and balances means that the judiciary shall not overstep its mandate, the executive will not overstep its mandate, and the legislature will not overstep its mandate, so that we can get an equilibrium of harmony. In my view, much of the aggression has been done by the courts to the executive.
To the executive, all right.
It has clearly indicated that they are very aggressive, and they have epitomized themselves into a prefect and nyapara position, so that they then think that they can only oversee what the executive is doing. Yet when the executive want to check on them through the ombudsman, they kill the BBI. So the question is, you know, what is good for geese is good for gander. So in my view, we require to have a conversation so that we can then understand how shall we stabilize the rule of law. Because the moment the judiciary takes a position that whatever the executive does ought to be challenged and ought to be revoked and ought to be stopped.
But they always cite the law in this case.
They do. But for example, even when you are citing the law, you must also look at the social optics. When the court went further and said that all those CSAs who are not vetted are not legally serving in government, how do they expect us to deal with the issues of those budgets that were passed by the same cabinet that ended up paying their salary? Because if it is, for example, you know, a cabinet has what we call collectivity approach to all things. So if CS Matiang'i served in a meeting which discussed the budgeting of the judiciary, it then means that budget itself is unlawful. Yet this judge was paid with the same budget that was decided by a cabinet that was purportedly unlawfully constituted.
But at what point then do the judges come in?
The judges must balance.
And I mean, Only and only when there is a petition that is presented to them.
Yes.
So they can only keep silent until such happens.
Until you move them.
Yes.
But when you move them, they must also balance what will be the implication of my fighting. For example, when you say when you go and say that the cabinet secretaries are not properly serving in government, yet these cabinets are the ones that formulated the budget that ended up paying you, ended up paying making the judiciary functional. What are you then telling us? You should then be the very first person to return.
Okay, the monies that were given.
That you received because they are proceeds of an illegal process.
Okay.
So in my view, we must balance this thing so that we can get harmony.
All right, thank you so much.
I think for me, as I said, I'm not a lawyer, but I would think that the judiciary needs to remember something very, very loud. That law is made for man. Man is not made for them.
Correct.
I think they need to carve that at the back of their mind all the time. I'm not saying they don't have it at the back of their minds, but perhaps they are not using it.
All right.
they need to start using it.
Or perhaps they are, again, in a huge way, just amplifying the difference that exists.
Dogmatic, I don't think dogmatic interpretation of the law is the right way.
Correct.
Just like dogmatic interpretation of the Bible is not the right way. So I think we need to
relate.
But as I said, we are in a bad place. It's not. Something will give unless we sit down and agree that yes, the rule of law, but man was not made for the law. The law was made for man.
So
once we get to that compromise, perhaps things will start moving.
Okay.
Because it's not good at where
Agree with you. And as we sum up,
Yeah.
How will the court say that the president shall not take part in the appointment of the judges, yet the constitution mandates the president? How will these judges go to swear themselves in and they'll be swearing themselves in outside the ambit of the constitution? What will be the consequences of the judgments that they are going to deliver? Because the judgments that they're going to deliver will not be constitutional judgments because they were not brought into office constitutionally. You know, that's how the court needs to look at. To an extent that instead of giving some orders, they ought to have probably proposed a mechanism of resolving this dispute. Remember, we have annexed what we call court mediation, court-guided mediation in courts. Some of these things are the ones that the judges ought to propose, that they go for mediation to see whether we can find a solution. For example, when you say that Justice Odunga should swear himself as a judge of the Court of Appeal, under what circumstances, under what law, what will the procedure?
But we have to go back to what it is that the president cites as a reason as to why he's not appointed these 6, the integral issues that he's not coming out clear on. And the fact that these people are still holding the positions that are integral positions to speak of. I mean, is it not contradicting?
You know, to solve this problem, a person like that of the Attorney General should have begun the process of removing these judges so that they stop being a menace. And the question is, where was the Attorney General who represent the President in the Judicial Service Commission when all these persons were being proposed to be judges? So in my view, even the President's probably legal team might be failing